the morning after the fires back in 93, being 18 years old, I remember this one elderly guy, and he was like an old rancher. He asks, hey, firefighters, you guys have a rifle? He had 4 horses with him, and they were so burnt so bad, making noises I didn't know horses could make, and he wanted to put them down. But the house that we were charged to protect the night before, we couldn't save, burnt down, as did all his rifles. And so when someone says, oh, you know what, those people got what they deserve, imagine saying that to that rancher's face. He might have been wealthy, he might have had a ton of money, but at that moment, I could see through the soot that he'd been crying. Well, bro, that pain attached itself to me. When I see someone then, talking trash in the midst of pain, it opens those painful memories. I don't care if you're president or non-president, who you are, just let's quiet down for a minute and let's care for those people in need, and then start talking about all the what ifs later.
Hello and welcome to the March or Die show. Today, this is the show where I do my very best every single episode to give you the principles and perspectives you need to march when it would be easier to stay where you are and die. Today, a special episode, at least special to me. For those of you that are listening and don't live in the state of California, I'm sure you have still heard that here in California, Los Angeles County specifically, we've had just massive fires that have been fueled by massive winds. And how they started, we're not exactly sure. Lots of mismanagement, a lot of discussions around why it happened and how it happened and all of those things. But the question that we're going to work on today is this one. What happens to the first responders that are involved in something like this? More than 20,000 structures, and that number I'm sure will change, but that's the last number I heard. More than 20,000 structures burned, homes, businesses, churches. I heard this yesterday that in the city of Altadena, most of the churches have been affected by the fire, affected like their entire building or parts of their buildings have been destroyed. A lot of businesses, of course, billions of dollars worth of damage. We think about all those things, and that's what gets the headlines. But what about the firefighters that are watching this happen? They're doing everything they can. They either don't have the resources they need, or the winds are just out of control, which they were, and so they're not able to be as effective as they would like to. They're dealing with this. They're watching it. They're part of it. They're invested in it. And then it ends and they go home. What about the first responders? And this is a question that I think is important to ask and important to answer. And today I brought on a friend of mine, Jason Sautel. Jason's been on our show before. We met a number of years ago, and we've been friends. We've done some work together, podcasting and those kind of things, spoken at conferences together. And man, he has such a great perspective on this for a couple of reasons. One, he is a retired city of Oakland firefighter. So a lot of experience in the city of Oakland. He'll talk about that on the podcast. He also has a son who is a fire and who's been fighting these fires, the fires that we've just gone through here. And so he kind of has this view from a couple of different perspectives. He has a ministry where he ministers to first responders as well. And so I knew he was the right person to talk to. Very excited to have him on. So without further delay or ado, my guest, Jason Sautel. Jason, what is happening? Good to have you on.
Jeremy, how's it going, bro? It's been a while since we've chatted, and thanks for having me hang out with you for a while today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We've been friends for a while, and folks who follow the podcast have heard you. But man, there's so much going on in our world, right? In like the world,
right?
It seems like the whole world is changing right now. But in our world, we both live in California. A lot has happened over the last couple of weeks. And I think anywhere you live in the United States, you know about the fires in Los Angeles County. And it's crazy because having fires in California, particularly at this time of year, is not unusual. Having fires that consume so many structures is very unusual. A few years ago, we had the Paradise Fire, which took out an entire community. Mm-hmm. Very unusual, but also kind of isolated. Mm-hmm. And this is so different. I've heard upward of 20,000 structures. I don't know if that's true or not. Billions and billions of dollars. And I think one of the things that makes this super unique is that the communities that have been affected largely are very wealthy communities, but also like celebrities like Mel Gibson. And, you see all these celebrities now posting about it. So it's getting a type of attention that does not typically happen. And man, it's so weird. And then being in California is always interesting, right? Like being a Christian and a conservative in California, everybody throws rocks at us all the time, and
Right.
that's fine. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is not, maybe the fires generally, but specifically, what is the impact of something like this on the first responder community, specifically fire, but I know it's fire, police. I have relatives with LA City Fire, friends at LA City Fire, a lot of folks, even from the county that I live in here in Riverside. The strike teams, I think they call them. Everybody's involved in this thing, right?
Right.
And so a lot of folks are involved in it, and we're focusing on the homes, which we should. We're focusing on the damage, which is right. We're focusing on the families that have been hurt. We should have all of those conversations. But then we have this group of people, thousands of people from really all over the world, who take these kind of scars and traumas and memories and images home with them, our first responder community, and no one ever addresses them. So that was a long lead in, but you are a retired Oakland City firefighter. You've been involved in this world, even beyond that, speaking to the first responder community and ministering to the first responder community. And I just wanted to get your perspective on it and kind of get your thoughts on it. So that was a lot of words leading into it. But for those that don't know your background, maybe give a little bit of background and then talk about some of your personal experiences with fires like this, and then wherever you want to go from there. But I'd just love to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, for sure, brother. And again, thanks for having me on. And usually I'm the talker that just keeps going. So I appreciate all your, I appreciate that great lead in, man. There's a lot we can, we like to use the term undig there,
Yeah,
pull apart
sure.
and look at. I'm just going to start off with the word perspective kind of comes to mind. As a military man, that when you see something through the lenses of what you've experienced, the traumas of your past, the incidents that you've been to, it gives you a perspective that many don't have. And as a retired firefighter who actually started my career down there in Southern California, near this weird little town called San Jacinto, which I like to make fun of all the time. I was in Big Hemet, next to that little weird town.
Yeah, I always joke that Jason's one of the few people I've told that I came from there, because
Right.
no one wants to be from there.
Yeah.
But you found out about it, and so thank you
I'm
for
the same
sharing
way.
that.
That's the way it's always been about Hemet. I used to live there when Hemet was just an old folks town and a few kids like us. But regardless, when you look at it from the perspective, I always fall back onto 1993, which was my first fire season, and I was 18 years old. And the Santa Ana winds were hitting off, albeit in October, not in January, and bone dry, winds blowing at 80 miles per hour. And the adrenaline rush set in because you never want to see anyone's house burn. But as a firefighter, that's what you do. And in the midst of the battle, a lot of times you're not thinking of the realities of what's going on. You're just fighting fire, doing the job, moving on. But the lens that I now look at this through comes from after the fire. I remember when we were hitting fires all night back in 1993, houses were burning, things were just, it was something I'd never experienced in my entire life or thought was even possible. Fire moving at 50, 60 miles per hour from house to house, just hitting the houses burning down. And the dark and the smoke was just crazy. And the adrenaline rush was there. But come morning time, when the sun started to rise and my adrenaline started to slow down, I actually looked around, and these houses, bro, that we were protecting were now rubble, ashes. I mean, there was nothing there. And that was rough. But then what made it even more rough was seeing the people that were coming back, or, if they hid wherever they hid during the fire, you stay away from the flames. They were now in front of the houses. And dude, to see them crying, it attached itself to me. So when someone says, oh, there's those rich people in LA, I throw that to the side and I say, take Rich out and say, those people in LA. Okay.
Right.
Those people in LA, money doesn't take away feelings and pain at all. Trust me. So when I see people saying, oh, they can rebuild, they can do this, they're rich, bro, at the end of the day, they're experiencing trauma. And as we know, trauma causes pain, and pain just sucks.
Yeah.
And to have people then come in and pile something on top of that of, oh, they're rich. Oh, they should have done this. The shoulda, woulda, couldas. Bro, there's a time and a place we can talk about the shoulda, woulda, couldas. I'm huge into that. I'm definitely huge into that, and talking about what we can do to make it better next time it happens, because it will happen again.
Yeah.
But it just crushes me when I see conservatives or liberals or firefighters or cops or just anyone around the world saying they got what they deserved.
Yeah. Right.
Dude.
What's crazy is, so we see that the celebrity thing, and that's real, right?
Mhm,
And you could say, well, that's probably a second home or whatever, maybe, I don't know.
mhm,
You talk about 20,000 homes, that's a very small percentage. I was listening to KFI, which is a big
mhm,
radio station here in California, yesterday, and they were going through all of the local businesses that were
mhm.
completely burned down. And these are like, first generation, kind of mom and pop type businesses. They may never rebuild.
Right.
I mean, the destruction is not okay. Think about the um, whoever celebrity that had their house burned down.
Mhm,
Tragic. But think about these people. They don't have a house to go back to or a business to go back to. They have no way of making ends meet, and maybe the
mhm.
government will help, and maybe there's insurance. And yeah, when you say things like that, your perspective is off for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people died, bro. Let's put that number one into
Right.
perspective. And as Christians, where
Yeah.
our hearts are for
Yeah.
people who have passed. Like, wow, I'm praying that they had the faith that you and I have. But number two, when you start hearing those stories, it's personal because, as I mentioned, the morning after the fires back in '93, being 18 years old, I remember this one elderly guy, and he was like an old rancher. And when we were on his property, which his house burnt down, he comes up to us, bro. He asks, "Hey, firefighters, you guys have a rifle on your engine?" Well, no, we don't have a rifle on our engine. I mean, let alone being in California. But what crushed my soul, bro, was he had 4 horses with him, and they were so burnt so bad, making noises I didn't know horses could make, and he wanted to put them down. But the house that we were charged to protect the night before, we couldn't save, burnt down, as did all his rifles. And so when someone says, "Oh, you know what? Those people got what they deserve." Imagine saying that to that rancher's face. He might have been
Yeah.
wealthy, he might have had a ton of money, but at that moment, I could see through the soot that he'd been crying. The animals are wailing. There's a lot of pain there. Well, bro, that pain attached itself to me. I'm not calling
Right.
it PTSD. I'm not calling anything like that. But when I see someone then, talking trash in the midst of pain, it opens those painful memories. And I look at what's going through that. And I honestly just want to tell people, shut up. Just shut up for a little bit,
Hmm.
okay? Can we
Yeah.
just put things aside? I don't care if you're president or non-president, who you are, just let's quiet down for a minute and let's care for those people in need, and then start talking about all the what ifs later.
Yeah. And this is always the thing is like, well, your politic. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I live here. I grew up here. I get it. I don't like our politics either.
Mm-hmm.
And were these things mismanaged? Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And should people be held accountable? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're talking about are the people who are impacted and the frontline folks, the
Right.
firefighters who could care less about your politics or what you think about
Mm-hmm.
this or that, and they didn't have the resources they needed. Many of them.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like as a firefighter? And your son's a firefighter too, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. He's actually he was down there on the fires for the Altadena fire.
Man, it's just crazy. What's it like as a firefighter to be in a place where it's like I can't do anything about this. I've trained my whole life. I've
Mm-hmm.
done all the stuff. I'm prepared, but
Right.
I can't do anything about this. What does that do to a firefighter?
It's crazy, dude, because if you think about it, we can't stop a tsunami, we can't stop an earthquake, and we can't stop a wind-driven fire with mass amounts of fuel in front of it. It is what it is. Fuel that's ready to burn, dry, tender, whether it's house, whether it's brush. You protect the best you can. You try to channel the fire into spots. But when you open up your hose line, you can usually shoot, 50, 60, 70 feet
Yeah,
out in front of you and be very effective. And you're opening that nozzle up into the wind and it's going about 4 feet in front of you and blasting you back in the face. It just blows your mind. I mean, we hear the words apocalyptic.
yeah,
What I like to explain it as is it's just the power that nature has, God's created nature has, is so insane when you're in the middle of it. And the feelings of hopelessness is what sucks, dude, because when you see a house starting to burn, your intentions as a firefighter on any given day is, 3 fire engines show up, a ladder company, and we go to work on the house and we stay working on the house. But we now see a house burning in a neighborhood. We have to leave that one knowing everything that a person worked for is inside. We'll do a search, make sure no one's inside it.
yeah.
We then have to leave and get ahead of the fire, dude, so we can try to save the next 100 houses. And it kills you when that one house burns down, but it's even worse when the 100 you were going to save, they burn down too. I mean, you feel like a failure. You really
Yeah.
do. And I know people love to give accolades. The firefighters aren't failures. They're doing everything they can do and stuff. But at the end of the day, when you walk away from a community being torched, it's almost like you walked away from the battle defeated, and it's a rough place to be.
How do you process that? I mean, you've been retired for quite a while now, and
Mhm.
um, you speak on issues of resiliency and spiritual resiliency and
Mhm.
these issues to the first responder community. You and I have actually spoken at conferences together.
Mhm.
But how do you help someone process that? I mean, what's your message, or what would your message be to your son, or to, these firefighters who are out there and it's like, man, we just watched 100 homes, 200
Mhm.
homes burn. There was nothing we could do about it. What do you
Mhm.
say to them in terms of recovery,
Mhm.
resiliency? Um, how do you move forward after that?
I think the number one thing that comes to my mind for the first responder that witnessed it is honesty. Be honest with what you're feeling. Bro, I've been to countless fires where they didn't really affect me. I mean, bad things happen, but for whatever reason, I can't get into the science behind it because I don't know the science behind it,
Yeah.
but it didn't affect me. So I was honest. I'm like, hey, I'm actually good. And a
Yeah.
counselor would
Yeah.
be like, are you really good? I'm like, bro, I'm really good.
Yeah.
Trust me,
No,
I'm
I'm
good here.
fine.
Right. I'm being honest with myself. But I think that firefighters need to be honest because our son, who we adopted, who came from a painful background, bro, his first fire season, he was at the campfire, which
Mm,
wasn't paradise, and he was on the second alarm Simon. And what he witnessed just crushed him. And immediately on the fire line, when he had some downtime, he called me.
yeah.
And dude, it was so rough to because I could hear it in his voice, but he was being honest. Now he calls from Altadena, where that fire was. And he had a rough go, don't get me wrong, but the pain in his voice sounded different. It was just he sounded like it wasn't affecting him as much, but he is being honest with me. He's like, Dad, this time I was an officer down there as
Mm,
opposed to being a firefighter. And it affected me different because I had so many things on my mind, worrying about the guys, worrying about everything else above and beyond just squirting water. And he's being honest with me. So, as a first responder, I tell the guys and gals, be honest with your emotions, and obviously reach out to the resources that you have. There's a plethora of them out there. Even if it's just a buddy, start the process of reaching out to a trusted person and be honest with them what you felt. And then on the flip side, I also tell people don't pester them right away either. Just let them be.
sure.
Let
Yeah.
them let
Sure.
them process out, but also don't let them slide away. But you know me, bro. I'm a huge believer of putting it back on the person struggling, saying you need to do your part too. And without being mean or jerk or anything
Right.
like that, but just being honest with yourself. What are you feeling?
How do you prepare ahead of time for something like that? This was unexpected, and that's the first responder world, right? Your son's a firefighter, my son's a police officer, and
Mm-hmm.
and we have similar conversations, and I work to help him be prepared for what
Mm-hmm.
may happen. What are some of the keys for someone that's listening that maybe they weren't involved in these, but they're first responder community, they potentially could respond to something like this? What do they need to have built into their lives to be resilient in the midst of something as tragic as this?
Yeah, well, the last time I squirted water while getting paid was in 2018.
Yeah.
I've been able to sneak out, and there's a neighbor's house burning one time, so I used a garden hose and stuff, which was I didn't want to see it burn down. I was like, oh, I remember doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
But to prepare yourself, there's so many different ways to do it because I was talking with a lot of retired LA County
Yeah.
firefighters, and that's their home, that's their place they're going, and
Yeah.
they weren't prepared to sit in retirement and watch this happen because even though they're trained, we're not credentialed anymore. Can't just show up to a fire zone and
Yeah.
no one knows who
Yeah.
you are because you can be like those clowns I heard. They're like some child molesters that were down there and stuff doing that. So it crushes us because obviously they're not in that crowd, but because we can't go in, but you
Yeah.
still have the skill set of wanting to go to work, it's a hard thing to do. So, for those guys who might be listening, I tell them prepare yourself by being ready to pour into the guys that were there. You're not
Mm,
18 anymore. You're not a young guy. You can't yank all that hose around. Let them go get it. But take all the resiliency that you've built up, all the knowledge that you've gained, and be ready to pour it into them. And you're going to be doing something major, Plus, you're going to be doing something that was never given to us during our generation because the old guys before us, they didn't have the ability to come and talk to us about their struggles. There's no programs like that. So
Yeah.
that's one way. The other way to prepare yourself is it's not about being the physical and the mindset. It's making sure that you have the strength to fall back onto when yours runs out. Now, obviously, I'm going to come as a Christian right now, that strength being in Christ Jesus. But he also gave us brothers and sisters to fall back on.
Yeah.
So when your mental strength is gone, when your physical strength is gone, fall back on them. Vice versa, be prepared for them to fall back on you. That's what the brotherhood and sisterhood is all about. So creating a brother and sisterhood that works. Do your machoism, do all that stuff. We've all been there. It's cool and everything, but be prepared for what you're going to see, because every day we're prepared to go to a fire, or heavens forbid, whatever your son has to do, protecting us from the worst of what's out there in this world and stuff. And he doesn't expect to encounter it, but he has to know he's going to encounter it. And he has to be prepared mentally on the spot to handle it, but also long term for the pieces that attaches themselves to us, that we have a place to lean into the strength we need. So I'm just going to keep throwing it back. It's mental strength to build up so you can have that resilience and ready to go, by understanding you can't go at it alone. You're going to be weak if you do, and you're going to fall if you do.
It seems like, I work in the veteran community a lot, but the veteran community, the first responder community, often it is tragedy that pushes men and women to find the right foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And, to that, I'm speaking specifically of faith. It's tragedy. It's something like this where you realize, like, this is really out of my control. I can't do anything about this. I can't change it. There are powers beyond me,
Mm-hmm.
and people that I care about have been hurt, whatever the case. And it pushes people to establish the right foundation, a relationship with God, and understanding what that means. Um, but it's amazing to see people who have established that foundation before the struggle, before the
Mm-hmm.
trauma, before the overwhelm. When that foundation is right, you have something secure to stand on. And
Mm-hmm.
so, man, the doubts, the fears, the regrets, the images, often whatever is rolling around in your head, you have something firm to stand on. And I think that's a really important thing that doesn't often get talked about. We talk about how to train for our jobs, but what are we doing to prepare
Right.
spiritually to establish a foundation that we can stand firm on?
Right.
And man, that's so important.
No, I hear you on that, dude. And that's what I love about the training side of things. I'm not trying to say I'm better than anyone else or I've done more things, but seriously, dude, in 1 year in the Oakland Fire Department, you can experience what many guys and gals will go through in 30 years, just condensed
Sure.
into one thing there. So when it comes to training, I can teach you how to cut holes in roofs, kick doors in, advance a hose line and do all that stuff. But you hit the nail on the head. I now come in from the viewpoint of, so what happens when we use all this training, but it still doesn't work?
Right.
What happens when we're done? What happens when, heaven forbid, someone else has taken their final breath and their eternity is being locked in, dude?
Right.
That's what's important to me. And so you also nailed it on saying you have to be prepared for that, because I wasn't. I became a first responder hoping that being a firefighter would make me better, and it didn't. It made me worse. And it wasn't until I realized that nothing this world said would work was working. I mean, everything, I mean, all the counseling, everything, it wasn't working, bro. But
Yeah.
it was once I put my faith in Jesus, and that's where my foundation was, things started to change. And what I like to tell people is it wasn't like this cliche thing like in a movie, but I honestly felt at that moment that if something was to happen to me moving forward, I was going to be okay. Not
Yeah.
talking about worldly okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I knew I was going to be okay. Did that make me just run out and be an idiot firefighter and charge even harder? No, I still took calculated risk and everything. But knowing that I was created for something beyond here on earth, bro, the peace and what we all know is hope that gave me helped me carry through, and it gave me the foundation that I truly needed.
Yeah. That's good. I think about you talking about honesty too, just how important that is. One of the criticisms that, it's not really criticism, but I think it's pointing out a fact about firefighters and police officers in particular, is that they deal with the traumas and all the crazy stuff they have to deal with, and then they have to get up tomorrow and do it again. And so
Mhm.
there's never really space built in
Mhm.
to deal with what they just saw or what they experienced. And so they just kind of pretend like it didn't happen, and they just shove it down in that pack year after year until they can no longer carry the pack. And
Mhm.
sometimes that happens after retirement for a lot of people,
Oh
but
yeah.
it might happen even during their time of service. Um, how do you find space to be honest with yourself and with others and to get the help that you need when you're in that type of an environment where it's
Mhm.
like, no, there's going to be more fires tomorrow or more people that need my help tomorrow?
Mhm.
I can't, particularly in leadership, right? I can't stop and deal with how I feel right now. Well, you're going to deal with it. The question is, do you deal with it now, or are you dealing with it down the road? How do
Right.
you find that space in the midst of, kind of the just the rapid, never-ending cycle of work that you're in?
Yeah, I've always explained it is when you're on the job, you kiss your wife, spouse, husband goodbye, and you head out the door, you then become a stone cold lifesaver.
Hmm.
Meaning you have to put your feelings aside. You have to put your family's feelings. You had a spat with your wife. Well, I'm sorry. You can't let that affect you when
Right.
someone else may be dying and they're
Yeah.
relying on your mental strength and physical strength to save their life. But as you mentioned, trying to now go from stone cold lifesaver back home, being a stone cold lifesaver is not going to work at home. It
Right.
is
Right.
not, bro. It's
Right.
You can't come through the door like that. So for the basic tangibles, what I try to tell the guys is even if you live in the town that you serve, I loved it that I didn't because I had a 45-minute ride home just to kind of debrief, degas. If I recognized something in me was eating me up, I would even pull over at a gas
Yeah.
station, grab a cup of
Yeah.
coffee, and read my Bible. Call a brother, call someone
Right.
else. But I made sure that I didn't bring that stone cold lifesaver or that guy who was really angry because a child died the night before to my wife. But hear me out. I did bring it to her in a way that she could help me because as my wife, Christy, God gave Christy to me to help work through these things. And she's strong enough to help work through these things with me. So I tell the guys, you also have to tell your spouse what happened. Now, do we get into gory details and all that? Dude, I don't have to tell Christy, hey, a kid
Yeah.
got hit by a car and go
Yeah.
into detail what it looked like. She knows. Everyone knows how rough that is.
Yeah.
But to be able to share with your spouse your feelings, like I mentioned a bit ago, the honesty. Honestly, this is how I felt. I'm a little on edge today. Like seriously, last week with our kid going down on the fire, she was worried as a mom.
I bet.
I mean, I was thinking on so many levels, but then there was a lot of my trauma of my past that was hitting me that I was just on edge, dude. I was a grouch last week, dude.
Mm.
And she recognized that. And then I had to be honest with myself. She's like, hey, what's going on? I said, I don't know. It's just these fires are drumming up so much because when I was 18 years old and I was on the fire line, that's when I was also at the worst point of my life with my dad
Yeah.
and the struggles
Yeah.
were. And it woke it up. So I want guys and gals to understand that you're gonna have those rocks. You need to have a place to put those rocks down, but I also want you to know those rocks have a way of jumping back into our bag. So we got to make sure that we have the tools in place to pry them out again to give us the rest, relief, and comfort that we all deserve from the job
Yeah.
and stuff. So it's a proper balance, bro. It's being honest with yourself, being honest with your spouse, having the tools available. And the tools may not be your EAP program. It may not be, I
Yeah.
need to go to the Mighty Oaks right now. It's just,
Yeah.
it starts off somewhere, but make sure you have the tools, bro. And that's what I'd
Yeah.
like to encourage folks to have.
I think one of the things too is those tools need to be authentic and real, because a lot of folks in the fire service or in the police departments, whatever, police officers, they just kind of numb it out. So instead of actually dealing with it, you say, how are you dealing with this? Well, I drink, I,
Mm-hmm.
I look at porn, I gamble, I do whatever. And you take these bad behaviors and you pile them on top of, a broken person. That doesn't make things better. Now it may make the pain go away for a little
Mm-hmm.
while. I'll grant it. It may, but it is going to make things worse. The tools that you have, the tools that you're getting hold of, the techniques, whatever you're using to deal with this needs to
Mm-hmm.
be real,
Right.
not just something to numb away how you feel right now.
Right. And I agree because you'll hear even folks like, And I don't want to go too far off in this, but someone says, hey, have a glass of wine to relax. Well, I'll be honest with you. I have a glass of wine. It kicks my depression off that much more, dude.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really does. And I don't struggle with substance abuse, alcohol being a substance too. It's never been a struggle. But if I try to have a drink, it makes it worse. If I go, hey, I'm just going to go hiking for the day. Okay, you're partway there. I get it. You're partway
Right.
there. That's
Right.
good. But where is the truth? Physically exerting yourself and grounding yourself with nature is not going to get you healthy, dude, because that's not going to fix your psyche. You
Right.
need to make sure, and you know me, I can't back away from telling people they need a faith-based approach, and it may turn some folks off, but just work on that faith-based approach
Yeah.
because that will help rewire your way of thinking. Because I truly don't believe we're capable of rewiring our thinking. I believe as we grow in our Savior that our thinking gets rewired for us, and it's really important to stay grounded in that area.
What happens next for these thousands of firefighters have been involved in this?
Mhm.
Uh, what happens next for them? Where do they're 24 hours a day for a week. They're involved in
Mhm.
this thing, and then it's over. What happens to them now?
Well, I think that's something you could speak into because a week is one thing, but I mean, you went to war for months on end. And here's something I think anyone who puts others above themselves in their line of work can understand this. You're inundated, even if it's just a 24-hour shift of saving lives, doing this.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then all of a sudden, you have all this crazy, and it's so loud, dude. I mean, I've never been on the battlefield, but fighting fire, being in law enforcement, it's loud, dude,
yeah,
because you're being
yeah,
inundated with
yeah,
so many things. And then all of a sudden, you walk through the doors, daddy's home.
yeah,
And like, dude, seriously, an hour before that, you were in the worst of the worst. You might have
yeah,
been on body
yeah.
recovery in these parts. And it's rough, dude. And so that's why, again, I tell folks just make sure you have the tools available. And I'm going to throw that actually back to you. How do you deal with that? Because we're all coming back from battle. It just may be a different
Yeah.
battle.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? It's a lot of things that we've talked about. And again, I think coming back from a combat environment, I've had this conversation a lot. It's different in that the trauma is crazy, but then there's space. And not
Mhm.
only is there space in terms of like time, that happened a month ago or that happened, but there's distance,
Mhm.
geographical distance. And so I can separate from it. I think in a lot of ways, that's why veterans don't deal with things sometimes because, like, well,
Mhm.
that was over there and I don't have to deal with it. But you do need to address it. You need to get the right people in your life. And it starts with that foundation of faith.
Mhm.
It starts with understanding that God, the creator, has a plan and a purpose for your life. And then surrounding yourself with other like minded people who can encourage you in that. We surround ourselves with people who tell us what we want to hear. We need to get the right kind of people in our lives who are positive people and helpful people, but are people who are moving the right direction and going along with us in that direction. Um, and then I think we need a few, very good, what I would call mentors, because people understand the
Mhm.
word, but
Right.
people kind of from the outside that have permission to speak truth into our
You
lives.
nailed it. Permission to
And
speak truth. They've earned the
and
right. Correct.
we've given them that permission, right? If you call me up and say, "Hey, man, I've been watching your stuff or listening to your stuff, and here's some concerns I have," I'm going to listen to that, right?
Mhm.
Because I trust you, and I know that you have my best interest in mind.
Mhm.
Now, other people say stuff, and I could care less because I don't know where they're coming from or what
Right.
they mean.
Right.
People have their own agendas wrapped up
Right.
in stuff, so it's having specific people in your life that can look at your life. They don't have an agenda. They don't have a plan for your life other than you doing what God wants you to do. They want what's best for you. And so they have permission from you. And a lot of times that's you telling them, "Hey, I want you to tell me, call me out if there's something wrong here. Give me
Mhm.
some direction if I need it." Um, so dealing with that, recovering from those things, I think is that it's starting with, a relationship with God, understanding who
Mhm.
he is, that he has a plan and a purpose for me. It was created, designed, right? I'm
Right.
not just out here trying to figure it out, that
Right.
I'm in a community of people that are moving the right direction.
Mhm.
And then I have some specific people in my life who can call me out when I need that. And
It's so important, right?
that's super helpful.
You nailed it there. And again, like with my ministry, it's just so far reaching, because
Yeah.
it's not like people go there and say, oh, you're with Mighty Oaks, and it kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
directs them and it gives it. I get nailed in all directions. And what I tell people though is I'm here for first responders. I'm here for everyone. You want me to pray for you? I'm going to pray for you.
Right.
But I don't hand my phone number out to a Mrs. Smith down in Alabama who's 78 years old that's
Right.
having a struggle with her pastor. I just don't, because that's not my wheelhouse.
Right.
But when a firefighter, cop, military, anyone hits me up, they're getting my phone number. They really are. Just be cautious with it. It's all I ask.
Yeah, right.
But and then what I say is, I can't help you, but what do? I'll connect the dots. I'll be like, where are you? Okay, here's a local church I think is super. Hey, my buddy Jeremy has this thing called Mighty Oaks. If you ever look at their foundation, I will give it to them. But I'm also a huge believer in sweat equity, that people need to reach out. Like if I say, Jeremy, there's this guy and he's going through this, you need to call him. As well as I do how well it's going to work if you call him.
Right.
But if he reaches out to you, now we've had that. And then you start that process of earning it. So you're again hit the nail on the head that, we have to earn the right to speak into people's lives. How does it happen? They reach out to us. Number two, I believe also by flooding this thing I can't stand called social media and the internet with good stuff. Man, people are going to go there. And as he said, hey, cut off the porn for a few minutes and come on over here and take a listen to this. Don't take that drink. Hear what we have to say. And the last thing I want to throw out there, Jeremy, is I know a lot of people who hear what you and I have to say, they truly are blind and deaf, which is not a bad thing, to our beliefs. And I get that. And I just want to encourage them, though, don't shut down what we're saying, because you can still hear what we're saying. It may not make sense to you, but listen to what we're saying. And try to process it and hit us up a little bit, even if you don't believe. I mean, I was that guy who didn't believe. I didn't believe in Jesus. I couldn't stand him. I was the Antichrist of the Oakland Fire Department. But what I tell people is just hear what we're saying, process it, listen, and reach out to us.
Yeah, reach out. And like you, if I can't help someone, I've gotten to the point where I've gotten really honest. I used to try to help everyone, right? And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, look, I can't help you if you hit me on Instagram or whatever. I can't help you, but I know someone who can, or I know an organization that can, and you need to reach out to them.
I could have used you in my life about 6 years ago when I was first getting started, bro, because I was helping everyone. And I was
well, and that's ministry, right? Your call is to help people. And so you want to, but you realize you just can't. An organization that's become, important to me, and I know it's to you, is Firefighters for Christ. Mm-hmm. They're a national, international, really organization of firefighters. They come from a faith position, a Christian position. It's in the name, Firefighters for Christ, but it's just men and women who have been firefighters. They're in your community, wherever you are. You look them up online, you can find a place, and there are some great people to connect to. Yep. So even outside of, like us or people like us, there's some great organizations. Mighty Oaks Foundation, which I serve with, would love to help with that too. So yeah, get help, man. Don't just hang on to it and think it's going to work itself out, because it's not. Jason, I appreciate you so much, man. I this has been something that's been on my mind, and I just knew that you were the right guy to talk about it. So thanks for doing it and just sharing with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Anytime I get to first off hang out with you, I'm all in. But number two, if we get to help out the community and stuff, and our communities, I should say more clearly, our community.
That's right.
I'm all in too.
Yeah. Where can people follow you? You're an author, podcaster. I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on. You do have your own ministry. Where can people follow you and find out more about the work you're doing?
You know what I do now is I just direct them to one simple website, and it's called rescuerbook.com. And I'm not trying to be this big sell and stuff, but it has other ways to find me there, or, just Google my name and things will probably pop up, but rescuerbook.com, because I am trying to get people to read this little book that I wrote, because it's not saying, look at me. It's saying, hey, I want to give you a voice that you may not have right now. So that's kind of a spot where I try to tell people to start, but you can find me on the Instagrams, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate Jason and that perspective. He started off with that word perspective, and that's what this is all about. So many lessons there. And again, there's a lot to absorb and a lot to understand. And it's easy after a conversation like this to say, well, I'm not a firefighter, I'm not a first responder. But the principles are the same. You need to have the foundations right in your life. Have the foundation right, an understanding of who God is and his plan for you. There is hope, there is purpose, there's design. Have that established before the trials and the traumas and the craziness of life comes into your life. And you'll be able to be resilient in the face of those things. That's what we talk about here. How do we march when it would be easier to just stay where we are, give up, and die? How do we do that? Well, a big part of that is establishing that foundation of faith before we even start. That's a big thing. Be honest with yourself. Jason said this a couple of times. Be honest with yourself and with others. Talk about what you're going through, what you're dealing with, how you're feeling. Surround yourself with the right people and get in a community of people that can help you. So many important principles for dealing with things like this, but also for safeguarding yourself spiritually and emotionally, putting in place those pieces that need to be there before the difficulties come. Appreciate Jason and him coming on the show today. Go ahead and check him out and his book, rescuerbook.com. Great place to find information on him. Take some time, go over to lifeaudio.com. You will find other great podcasts there. And I know that would be a help and an encouragement to you. Appreciate you listening. Look forward to talking to you next time.